Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We're here for the 144th meeting of the Foreign Affairs and International Development Standing Committee. This morning, the committee is continuing its examination of the main estimates 2019-2020. And this morning, we're hearing from the Minister of International Development, followed by officials from Global Affairs Canada. I'd very much like to welcome, for her first time before our committee, the Honourable Mariam Monsef, Minister of International Development. With her today are Deputy Minister Diane Jacovella, and joining us once again, Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Deputy Minister of Corporate Planning, Finance and Information Technology, Mr. Arun Thangaraj. Minister, as is our practice, if you would like to take approximately 10-12 minutes to do an opening remarks, followed by which, of course, we will open it up to colleagues and have some questions. I will remind colleagues that we're going to try and stick as closely as possible to the 6 minutes per question. I will point out, as I did the other day, when we're within 30 seconds of the end of time, just so that gives an opportunity for either the questioner or the answerer to be able to wrap up their remarks. With that, Madam Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Bonjour, Anin, Salam Alaikum, Ramadan Kareem to our Muslim colleagues observing Ramadan. C'est un grand privilège pour moi de me tenir ici.
It's a true privilege for me to be standing here on our traditional Algonquin territory.
I'll spend some time today beginning the conversation by talking about my three hats. I am proudly the member of Peterborough Kawartha. Like you, it shapes who I am and what I do, and will connect the local aspects of the work we do here in Parliament to the international work that we're doing, both within my capacity as Minister for Women, but more importantly for the purpose of this committee as Minister for International Development. The world needs more Canada. We all cheered when we heard President Obama say that to us in the House of Commons 3 years ago when he addressed us. And why? He elaborated on it, but we need to only look at our communities to understand why. People in my riding are kind, they're generous, they care about each other, and they most certainly care about what happens to our neighbors around the world. Whether it's been the Irish refugees, whether it's been the Vietnamese boat people, or more recently, our Syrian neighbors, my community, much like the rest of Canada, has a proud tradition of opening its arms and growing because of the diversity of perspectives that exist, but also because when somebody's in trouble, we step up. Why is Canada so invested in international development? We can all agree that a strong middle class, support for those working hard to join it, smaller gaps between the rich and the poor, basic safety, choice, voice, opportunities, these are good things that lead to stronger economies, that lead to greater stability, and that prosperity and stability is good for all of us. It's a good thing at home, it's a good thing abroad. And we all know that at its very basic fundamental levels, we all want the same things for our kids and grandkids, right? We all want a better future for them. It's what my mom wanted for my sisters and me when she brought us to Canada 23 years ago. It's what I want for my nieces, Layla and Ilya, and I'm sure that you feel the same way. For us in Canada, our international development efforts, our peace and security efforts, the work we do with trade and economic development are all intertwined. 4 years ago, we promised Canadians a government that would build an economy by investing in the middle class. Our approach was to take immediate and key policy choices like the Canada Child Benefit, pay equity, parental leave, daycare spaces, upwards of 40,000 to name a few, and all designed to provide Canadians with some breathing space so that they could make the plans that they needed to, so that they could match their skills to jobs available and move into and upward within the Canadian economy. 3.5 short years later, the plan that Canadians have invested in has produced 1 million new jobs. 825,000 Canadians are lifted out of poverty, the lowest unemployment on the record. Child poverty rates have been cut by 40%. That's 300,000 Canadian kids no longer going to bed hungry at night anymore. So starting at home with a world-class public service, who are here with me today, we implemented progressive economic and social policy and have achieved real results. Not to mention that all of this happened in Canada, while the rest of the world has decided to become more protectionist. The progress that we've made in Canada didn't happen easily. It didn't happen accidentally. It happened because we are building a strong and resilient Canada, and we're focused on a plan. We've embraced fact-based decision-making. We've unmuzzled our scientists. We focused on equality, and we are prospering because of it. Our plan is working because we are focused on Canadians, and Canadians are working. More women working now than ever before, more young people, more newcomers, more persons with disabilities, more youth and Indigenous people working now than ever before. In a time where many throughout the world question the role of government, we need to only think about those 300,000 kids having decent meals every day, the clean water flowing through Indigenous communities, the plan to fight climate change, to see that government policies matter. Internationally, Canada's leadership on the global stage has perhaps never been more important. The coordination of our feminist international assistance policy, Canada's proud tradition of peacekeeping, our strong, secured, and engaged military interventions, our focus on free and fair trade, and the focus on growing the middle class and supporting those working hard to join it are all part of the work Canada's doing around the world. Rules-based order, free and fair trade, protecting human rights and human dignity. That's what will grow the economy and build greater stability. And we have a strong team doing this. You've seen some of them here, and you've seen many of them in your own daily doings. The Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, Jim Carr, Bill Morneau, Ralph Goodale, Karina Gould, Marie-Claude Bibeau, my predecessor, whom I know you folks have had many conversations with, Carolyn Bennett, Kirsty Duncan, Catherine McKenna, Francois-Philippe Champagne, Harj Sajjan, Mary Ng, Nav Baines, and Melanie Joly. We are making a difference because it's a whole of government approach. For myself, I want to talk about the focus we're bringing to equity through our government's focus on international assistance that has an intersectional feminist lens applied to it. Through this policy, we have made immediate and deliberate policy choices that impact the health, education, socioeconomic security of women and girls around the world. These investments in development are strategic. They're intended to make more effective use of every dollar to see women and girls be healthy, to be in control of their bodies, with access to education, safe and secure, prepared to lead their communities, because when women and girls are doing well, their families are better off, their communities are stronger, their countries' economies are more stable, and peace is more enduring. Gender equality matters because everyone benefits. And if we continue this focus on advancing gender equality, we are tapping into a $12 trillion economy over the next decade. And if we do it right here in Canada, we could expect $150 billion of that right here over the next decade. And our approach should be no surprise. When she's healthy, when she controls her body, when she has access to education, something that can never be taken away, you see real change. These issues are borderless, as basic human rights are borderless. Let's talk about the work that we're doing in Cox's Bazar. We're investing our international development dollars differently, as you know, and one of the tangible ways that we can see our feminist international assistance policy at work is with the Rohingya situation. And many thanks to Canadians who have gone there, including my own brilliant parliamentary secretary who's just come back. as well as Bob Ray. Canadians have invested $300 million over the next 3 years to help ease the challenges there. And one of the things that our teams are doing is investing in 38 women-friendly spaces in the camp. What does this mean? It means that she has a safe haven to go to where she can receive supports. It means that she can just be herself and not be on guard wondering how she's going to watch over her back. When we made this investment and when it started working, other countries stepped up, and the number has now increased to upwards of 70 safe spaces for women who are experiencing challenges. Remember, 85% of those in the camps are women and children. So upwards of 70 spaces, half of which also provide psychosocial and counseling support for those who've experienced sexual and gender-based violence. And I know that this committee knows how frequently those women and girls are abused en route to the camp and once they are trying to get their life back together. In Venezuela, this is making a difference. We're seeing that when we focus on women and girls, there is a difference. When we take a deeper look and see that Venezuelan migrants, the world is having a hard time calling them refugees because they don't have the proper documentation. When Canada steps in with $50 million and says, we are here to work with you with specific investments in neighboring countries, those dollars are going far and ensuring that neighboring countries don't feel overwhelmed by the sudden surge in arrivals within their new community. In fact, having spoken with some folks in Washington from Colombia, they're happy. They may not have much, they said, but we are happy to open our arms to our sisters and brothers because if we were in trouble, we would want them to do the same thing. We're also doing something that very few do. About 2% of the world's ODA goes to women's organizations. We've invested $150 million. This is the first time we're doing this to do that work because we know the most effective way to advance gender equality is by investing in organizations that are doing this work. Just like our plan at home, our plan abroad is working. It's evidence-based, it's comprehensive, it's effective. It's what separates us from previous agendas and from some of our international colleagues. In bringing my comments to a close, Mr. Chair, if I have the time, I want to speak to an issue that I expected to be discussing internationally, but I'm astounded to find myself addressing domestically. As a starting point, in this country, we settled the abortion debate 30 years ago. It's 2019. We can't afford to go back to politicizing women's bodies, and it's a regressive debate that I challenge us to shift away from. If we care about women, let's focus on doubling the number of women entrepreneurs over the next 2 years. If we care about the women in Canada, let's increase by 100,000 the women in manufacturing over the next 5 years. If we care about women, let's make it so that 2.5 days goes by, another woman is not killed, because that's what happens even here in Canada. We can't afford to roll back on women's fundamental rights, because those fundamental rights, whether it's at home or abroad, are directly linked to her sense of self, her sense of worth, her dignity, the economy's strength, and the overall stability. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here today with all of you. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions colleagues may have.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will now move straight into questions, and we will begin with MP Abutaleb, please.
Well, good morning, Minister. Welcome. And by the way, thank you for listing the names of your cabinet and your colleagues and their achievement. But the topic is international development, and we know that the international development section of Budget 2019 was very thin. So despite levels of official development assistance being at near historic lows, your government won't commit to any additional funds until 2024-2025, which is 5 to 6 years from now. So is this, or was this your government's way of indicating that you are giving up on Canada's Security Council seat bid?
Thank you for your question. And I can assure you that the work we're doing around the world is a whole of government approach. It's why I brought up colleagues who are moving this agenda forward with me. And I can also assure you that our bid for the UN security seat is alive and well. It was unfortunate that we lost that seat in the first place. The world needs more Canada, as we all agree. And so we're still working on that. In terms of the main estimates and the overall budget for international development, if you could clarify what you mean by all-time low, we have increased development dollars. We've also increased the way we are investing these dollars through an intersectional gendered lens. And Mr. Chair, I find it ironic that colleagues are asking us to invest more. When we did invest, when it wasn't a budget, colleagues rose in the House and voted against it.
Minister, I've been told, I was at I was at UNGA September 2017, and I ran to a minister of social affairs of one of the countries I'm not going to name. And then the first thing she said when I introduced myself as Canadian, she said, "Where is Canada?" And the Prime Minister at that time, was present at the United Nations building at that time. But you said that we've lost that Security Council bid. Can you
not say that. I said
no.
it was unfortunate that we're not in that seat anymore, that we don't have that seat
anymore. Would you be
anymore.
able to explain the process of how do we get to the point where we can secure that bid?
Well, there are many people working on this, including our ambassador, Marc-Andre Blanchard, in New York. I think one of the ways that we can do that is by stepping up and showing leadership. For about a decade, Canada stuck its head in the sand and pretending like we don't play a role on the international stage. That's changing.
Canada's relation internationally hasn't been worse, okay? China, United States, Middle East complete, and then we hear that those complaints from ambassadors of the Middle East area. So the Middle East been neglected completely in your international relations, as well as India. Okay, the India trip, the disaster India trip, these all showing us that we've lost so many friends around the world. And how are we going to really pursue that seat unless your government already given up on this, and there's no way that you want to pursue it further. This way, we have relationships that have been broken with many, many influential parties around the world. And here we are, we're trying to say that we're making efforts, your government making efforts, you're trying to say that your ministers are working hard, but all that is down on the real ground, okay? We have bad relationships with so many strategic countries out there, and I'm not sure how you think that you're going to achieve getting the right result by securing a bid on the Security Council seat.
3 trade agreements in one mandate in an era of protectionism. The proof is in the pudding. If our international relations cannot be shown to be working through those 3 trade agreements, I don't know what will. We have increased in budget 2019, $926 million for the Middle East. I know this is a particular area of the world that you and I care deeply about. We also saw in the previous budget $3.5 billion added to the budget at international development. So while I appreciate anecdotes about unnamed sources that you ran into at UNGA, and I'm glad you were there, I think it's more important to look at the results that show that our relationships are leading to results that are good for Canadians.
You mentioned free trade. We have a problem with India on trade. We have a problem with China that never unheard of now. And as I said, with the Arab world, Saudi Arabia is a great example. So we have so many crises out there. And where's the free trade among all that? Where is it? Please
1
explain
million
to me.
jobs. The
I'm not
lowest
talking about
poverty
the
rate on
1 million jobs.
record.
I'm talking about where is the free
NAFTA,
trade. You mentioned the free trade.
CPTPP,
You mentioned the
CETA.
free trade.
These are
Please.
3 examples in 3 years of trade agreements that have been signed.
Where are they? Where are they?
We tabled NAFTA yesterday
Yes,
to
I know.
begin
I'm
the
aware of that.
ratification process.
I'm aware of that. But I'm talking about India. I mentioned India. I mentioned China. I mentioned the Arab world. And the relationships with all these are broken. Can you explain?
You're saying the relationship with the entire Arab world is broken?
You know how
I
important...
met I've met
30
with
seconds.
colleagues from the
Saudi Arabia
United
is a
Arab
leader in
Emirates
that
over
area.
over the past few days. I've met with folks from Palestine. I've met with the international cooperation body made up of over 50 Muslim countries who are saying we need more Canada, and are very much happy to be part of the work that we're
who's the
doing.
leader of the Muslim
We
world?
hosted them actually for an iftar in New York last week, and we had good conversations around the hate that happens on social media, the political rhetoric that tends to intensify that hate, and some work that we can do with our women entrepreneurs through our development dollars. So I can assure you that we're there. Do we have opportunities to do more? Absolutely, and I really
Thank
hope
you.
that you'll step up
Thank you,
and
Minister.
help us.
We shall now move to MP Vandenbel, please.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Minister, for being here, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing. I am very happy that you mentioned sexual health and reproductive rights in your opening remarks. This is something that we know is there's retrenchment on this and backsliding south of the border, but also in many countries around the world in the last few years. And I'm reminded of when I was working in 2010, and this was during the Harper government. In 2010, I was working on a global project on women's rights, and I had regional centers in different continents. And the head of the Sub-Saharan Africa program that was working with me, her name was also Miriam by chance, she one day looked at me and said, "Anita, Canadians are hypocrites." And I was stunned and more than a little embarrassed. And I said, why? Why would you say that? And she said, it's because I studied at McGill, and I know that Canadian women have reproductive rights. But with your government, and this is the Harper government, you don't believe that we African women deserve the same thing. And what had happened was in her hometown, there had been a clinic for 40 years, funded by CEDA, Canadian clinic. And overnight, with no warning, that clinic was closed for the sole reason that they provided abortion as one of the options that they gave to women on reproductive rights. At that moment, that was probably the first moment where I realized that if I was really going to make a difference in the world, I needed to come back to Canada and run. And I did run in the 2011 election because I realized that our global reputation in terms of what we espoused, in terms of rights, in terms of where Canada was being undermined. So my question to you is, in the 9 years that have intervened in that time, and particularly since we came into power in 2015, what have we done to change that situation so that Canadians are no longer viewed by the world's women as hypocrites?
Thank you, and I'm glad you ran. My experience in entering politics also happened because things weren't happening, and Canada could be better. A few things have changed. Our approach to ensuring that sexual rights, health rights, reproductive rights are protected and exist within the international communities we work in are different from what existed over the past decade because of three things. It's evidence-based, it is comprehensive, and because of those two things, more effective. And this is not just about making sure that we do the right thing and ensure that she has the dignity to be able to choose when, with whom, if, how many children she has. But we're also investing in things like contraception. For every dollar invested in contraception, we are able to save $2.20. And so these investments, when done strategically, when done based on evidence, and when they focus on what she really needs on the ground, they happen to pay dividends both financially and for her.
Thank you very much. And one of the things that we know from this committee is that sexual violence is used as a weapon. And in this particular country, this was in Mali, in this rural area that she was from, she told me that many of the women who were accessing these clinics were because they had been gang raped by warlords. And some of them were teenagers. And they were being denied their reproductive rights because of that previous government policy. We have just done a study in the Subcommittee on International Human Rights, we've just completed, on women human rights defenders. And we know that those who fight for the rights of women to be able to live in peace and to be able to prosper in their countries, those very defenders are also targeted, and often targeted violently through sexual violence, but also by states through imprisonment and disappearances. What are we doing as part of our international policy on supporting those women human rights defenders? And I'm hoping, of course, that when our committee report comes out shortly, you'll have a chance to look at some of the recommendations of our committee as well.
Well, I very much look forward to that report. Yesterday was Peacekeepers Day, and this is a proud Canadian tradition, and it takes a really special person to decide that they're going to give up the security and stability in their own home and go abroad and help in a very volatile situation often, bring some peace or at the very least conflict resolution between people. And we know that that work comes with trauma, significant trauma. We know that that work also places them in grave danger. Some of the work that we've been doing with our peacekeepers, for example, and the ELSI initiative,
30
is a really
seconds.
good example of that, is to provide that training so that they know how to take care of themselves, but also so that they know how to intervene in those situations. And I'm happy to talk more with you about this. I'm running out of time, but that's a really good example of how we're stepping up along with other partners around the world to do this right, to ensure that there are also more women choosing to be in these roles.
Thank you very much. We shall now move to MP Duncan, please.
Thank you. Thanks again, Minister, and to your officials, and look forward to talking with them in the next hour. In follow-up to my colleague's question, I'm a little stunned at the response, Madam Minister. One of the named sources who have castigated Canada for failing to deliver its fair share of aid is the OECD. And the OECD in the Development Cooperation Review 2018 severely criticizes Canada for the drop in percentage GNI of aid. I'm wondering, Madam Minister, if you have provided a response to their concerns, and if so, you could provide that to the committee.
Thank you, Linda, and many thanks for your advocacy on this front. The OECD is a partner that we welcome collaboration with on a range of things. Have we provided them with a response? I'm not sure. Let me follow up. But I will say increased spending, Canada's ODA has gone up by 8%. That adds up, where we were in 2016 was $5.64 billion. We are at $6 billion now. This is also due to the fact that we're investing differently. We've established FinDev. Other countries had similar instruments to leverage financing. Canada didn't. We have that now, and it's got $300 million invested in it. The ODA ratio, the ODA to GNI ratio has increased by 0.28%. It's gone up from what it was the year before. And I will also say that we are also investing differently and providing leadership that others are
Questions about
following.
that, so if
Happy
I
to.
could ask you questions on that. But I do look forward, if you've done a response to the OECD, I would appreciate that. It's an issue of concern raised by every development organization in Canada. A concern that has been expressed to me, Madam Minister, is the Department, to their credit, did consult with Canadian civil society on how they plan to deliver the action items under the Feminist International Assistance Policy. But there's been no response. And so they're wondering, when can we expect the guidance? There was another independent review by the Canadian International Development Platform. They also had the same criticism. When can we expect that there will be some level of guidance? Where the concern really exists is less so in the organizations that are interested in delivering increased assistance to women, the ones who historically have delivered assistance to things like sanitation, agriculture, and water, and so forth. So when can Canadian civil society expect finally receiving that guidance?
Thank you for that question. And I know that our team's been hard at work. We unveiled part of it in Washington in April, the Feminist International Humanitarian Piece. So that's been unveiled. The rest is coming shortly. And I do want to pay particular attention to the time and the hard work of our stakeholders who helped shape the policy as a whole. We couldn't have done it without them.
Okay, thanks. We look forward to getting that guidance. We're currently reviewing how Canada could support democratic governance, and we're hoping that before Parliament closes that we might have some kind of recommendations to you. I noted in your Feminist International Assistance Policy, one of your action items actually is on that. There's been some disagreement about whether or not they relate to the SDGs. I notice your report actually specifically, your policy specifically addresses SDG 16. Can you advise me if it's your understanding that SDG 16 also includes support for democratic governance, and if so, do you intend to move forward and to provide more assistance in that area?
Having lived in a non-democratic nation and then being here, I appreciate that democracy is a gift. And here in Canada, we benefit from a healthy democracy. And we are working, for example, with the interventions we've recently made in Ukraine to help ensure that greater stability is driven because of a stronger set of institutions that protect democracy. And yes, you're absolutely right. The Feminist International Assistance Policy does commit Canada to supporting democracy, to international development initiatives that, for example, help to increase the political participation of women, including young and marginalized women. We're also working with governments to ensure that their level of engagement with women and girls includes meaningful participation in decision-making processes. And we're also investing in advocacy and programming to address discriminatory laws that prevent women and marginalized individuals from realizing their full economic, social, and political rights.
Do I have a few more seconds?
You have right on the 30-second warning, so yes, you have 30
Okay,
seconds
thanks.
more.
Madam Minister, I want to follow up on what my colleague had asked about the SRHR. There is concern expressed that we don't know yet if the government's committed to going beyond the 3-year pilot. Is there an intention going forward to give long-term commitment to the SRHR?
We are always going to stand up for women's sexual rights, health and reproductive rights at home and around the world. We did make a commitment in 2016 for $650 million over 3 years to do this work. And we are actively working with partners, including those who help shape our Feminist International Assistance Policy, to come up with a smarter, more sustainable, and long-term approach to this work. More to come.
Thank you very much. And we shall now move to a guest with us in committee today, MP Ludwig, please.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Minister, for being here today. There's an expression that I like to use, that you cannot be what you cannot see. And I think it's invaluable to see a strong and articulate woman in an international development lead role. So when you're traveling around the world, women see you as a beacon of hope. So thank you for that. I represent the beautiful riding of New Brunswick Southwest. As you know, you've been there. We have many organizations that would like to do more work, and everyone's looking for opportunities for funding. I'm wondering what you would tell someone in my riding, if that individual or individuals were in front of you, why we invest so much internationally when we have so many needs at home, and possibly what more can we do as Canadians at home and abroad? Thank you.
That's a great question, Karen. We need to be true to ourselves and take care of things at home while we look out for others around the world. And the two are intertwined, right? What if we had been better, more strongly engaged with what was happening in Syria years and years ago, for example, when the drought started? What if we had intervened with our development dollars? What if we had worked and coordinated and brought together international partners at a critical moment way upstream? Would the bodies of those little boys and girls still wash up on our shores? There is a direct link between us doing our part around the world and providing leadership, particularly now that we have a feminist approach to what we're doing, which is more effective. There's a direct link between those interventions and greater safety, security for us. But there's also an economic advantage. Canada has, for example, technology around water, wastewater management, and we need to ensure that Indigenous communities here have access to clean drinking water. We've made the right investments, the decisions on how to go about providing that clean drinking water for Indigenous communities in their hands, and to date, we've lifted over half of those boiled water advisories. The other half will be lifted over the next 2 years, but that means we have the expertise, we have the engineers, we have the technicians that can go around the world in places like the African continent and share that expertise and create economic development opportunities for Canada and for our partner countries. So they're directly related. As far as women's organizations in Canada go, and I'll put on my women and gender equality hat, we've invested historic amounts, over $500 million over the last 3 years for women's organizations in this country. And this includes investments in those who are working to address and prevent sexual and gender-based violence. This includes historic, never seen before, capacity building dollars. In Budget 2019, what I would ask you to share with your all of your constituents, for those who are working to advance gender equality, there's $160 additional million in Budget 2019 over the next 5 years, beyond an election cycle. So we're going to work really hard to make sure that we get to come back and that we're able to provide those dollars to communities. And I hope that every government from here on is going to take the needs of women's organizations at home and abroad seriously, because they are the most effective way to advance gender equality.
Thank you for that. When I did my first graduate degree, I actually did my thesis on essentially women's choices. And one of the comments that came through during my 2015 campaign at ADOR was it was actually about abortion. So I hadn't planned on raising it, but you had raised it as your last comment in your presentation. And one of the areas that I said that I think we need to do more work in is really respecting and encouraging, the other options that are out there as well. It's abstinence. It could be, early education when it comes to sexual activity. Young women that choose to have their children. Women that choose to give their child up for adoption. Because I do believe that if we looked at all those early choices, if those were if we had more of a culture shift to respect those, the choice for abortion would, as long as it's accessible, would be accessible, safe, but very, very rare. And I'm wondering what our government is doing in Canada and abroad on some of the other choices that are out there.
We know, particularly for adolescent girls, they are at an age where they're making critical, life-changing decisions. And evidence shows that abstinence doesn't really work, but what does is sexual education. What does work is investing in planning. It's why we're investing in Planned Parenthood, for example, in Canada and abroad. Evidence shows that access to contraception helps immensely, and I talked about the 1-to-2 ratio in terms of dollars invested and the return on that investment.
30 seconds.
For everyone. And the right to choose is to choose whether, how many, if, with whom to reproduce with, but also to adopt. And there are some women who are coerced not to have their babies, and that's wrong. Most importantly, investing in women's organizations so that they can continue their advocacy, because the work is far from over. That's also an important part of the work we're doing at home and abroad.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. MP Saini, please.
Good morning, Minister. Always a pleasure to see you, and thank you very much for bringing your colleagues around. I just want to reference something that you made in your preamble. You talked about the situation in Cox's Bazar and the plight facing the Rohingya people. This issue is important to me personally because in my riding I have a very small but a very strong Rohingya community. And we know that the people that are living there at that part of the world are facing horrific acts of violence perpetrated against them. We know that the army is involved in a lot of these killings, burning bulldozing of homes, separating families, and this is a tragedy on a that's can only be conveyed as a humanitarian crisis. Could you please update us as to how Canada is responding to this crisis in terms specifically on the feminist international assistance policy?
The image of the women and children with very little on their backs walking to find safety, I think that's going to stay with all of us. And the idea that some of those women, too many of those women in that journey were carrying the results of incest and rape is horrendous. And Canadians were outraged. So Canadians stepped up, and our government is investing $300 million over 3 years to provide the humanitarian assistance needed. I think it's really important to talk about why 3 years is important. We hear this from all organizations dependent on dollars. Without predictable funding, without sustainable funding, the work that those hardworking individuals do on the ground becomes more challenging. So we first and foremost provided stability and peace of mind to the individuals providing services. We have been the strongest in our condemnation that's happening in terms of the genocide. Colleagues in the House, we all stood and we all agreed that what was happening was wrong, and more importantly, that it was a genocide. And we are also grateful to the people of Bangladesh who have welcomed, 1 million refugees. That's a significant number, but we also know, just as we heard from folks like Colombia with the Venezuelan crisis, that there are economic opportunities for Bangladesh to be welcoming these individuals, but we thank them for doing this work. We are working with the World Bank and the government of Bangladesh, and we're providing $16.3 million to implement an innovative mechanism where we put in $1 and every dollar unlocks $5 in grant funding. And that means we're leveraging to over $81 million from the World Bank to support health, to support nutrition and basic education services for Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar. I talked about those safe women's spaces, but this comprehensive wraparound support is particularly important.
So I'm going to change just topics for a second. The other committee I also serve on is Access to Information Privacy and Ethics. And I'm sure you're aware that we wrapped up 2 days of meetings with the International Grant Committee. And one of the things that we discussed during that time was online platforms and the enormous disinformation and false information that can be conveyed on those platforms. We also know that an independent, free press is extremely important to convey accurate information and protect the foundations of our democracy. We also know that journalists around the world put their lives at risk in making sure that we get the truth, and they chase the stories that need to be told. Could you please update us also on what the government is doing to make sure that journalists are kept safe and how we are supporting their important work?
Absolutely, Raj. Following the Christchurch shooting, the Prime Minister stood in the House and called on the international community to come together and to address the online violence that is part of the spectrum of terrorism that leads to massacres in Canada and around the world. And the international community did come together, and we've introduced a charter around what's happening online. We're working with our international allies and the platforms themselves to address misinformation, but also terrorism that occurs online. So that's work that Karina Gould and Nav Bains and the Prime Minister, as well as Ralph Goodale, have been keenly focused on. And I think it is exciting. It's uncharted territory. And if we don't step up to do something, the violence that happens online will continue to spill over into our communities. Press Freedom Day was a few days ago. And I made an announcement with an investment of over $11 million to ensure that journalists for human rights continue to have the funding they need to send journalists from Canada who put their hands up and choose to go abroad in some of the most distressing situations, including in the Middle East and including in parts of Africa, to basically teach journalists there how to fish with a specific focus on women journalists telling the stories that may not be told. And when journalists' rights are threatened and when their lives are lost, we lost some 90 plus just last year, protecting human rights and human dignity becomes more difficult.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The last, second last question in this round, MP O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, Minister. I have to say at the outset, I was rather disappointed with your remarks. 10 minutes of remarks for your first time before committee, and almost 8 minutes of it was used with the middle class and those working hard to join it. You used that line twice. You recited the list of names of all members of cabinet, and it was only the last 2 minutes that we actually got into international development. So I'd ask you to take that back for your next appearance. We'd like to see a robust discussion of the issues under your portfolio. The Rohingya have come up both in Mr. Saini and in discussion. The plight of the Rohingya was first advanced by Ambassador Bennett in 2014 and 2015 when he traveled to Myanmar. He was the ambassador for religious freedoms, an office your government canceled and replaced with the Office of Human Rights, Freedom and Inclusion. The budget was tripled, but we've heard nothing from that office. Can you give an example of when you partnered with that office on a development issue around the world?
Well, firstly, Aaron, thank you for your question, and I'm sorry you were disappointed, but I have to say, a strong middle class at home and abroad is what we're striving to achieve, right? Why are we investing development dollars all over the world if not for that? So it's really important for me to share that.
You'd have to agree with me. That's one of the taglines of your government. So the
and
first
it's
8
also
minutes
good
sounded more like an
economic
election
and
ad
development policy.
than an appearance
So
at committee.
that's why I spent a little bit of time talking about it. But I also talked about what's happening at home because we have to make sure that Canada is strong and resilient while we do that work. That's sustainable development. In terms
to list
of
the names of all your colleagues, leaving out Jody Wilson-Raybould, I know.
and those who are doing work internationally ought to be recognized. And my goal was to show that our government takes this portfolio particularly seriously. It's not just on one minister's shoulders, but it is a whole of government approach. And that's how it should be. Because as colleagues mentioned, there's a lot happening all over the world that requires all sorts of eyes. In terms of religious freedoms, to answer your final question, we believe in religious freedoms and religious rights, and we're always going to stand up for them. We are the country of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We like to have that freedom to worship at home, and we expect that freedom to be protected for others around the world. That office that you refer to is working within the Global Affairs Department, and they are doing really good work.
Name one example of a project
I'll let my
they've done.
colleagues here name an example.
The office works very closely with the development side of the department. The Feminist International Assistance Policy actually has adopted a human rights-based approach to everything we do now in humanitarian assistance, so we collaborate very closely. One example is human rights defenders. We task all of our missions around the world to make sure that they advance these issues. They look at how they can promote the protection of the rights of those defenders. We are
Specifically, perhaps about the Rohingya or the Uyghurs. Has that office been involved in any way in those very, very troubling circumstances with those
yes.
groups?
So one of the things in our strategy for the Rohingya is to ensure that the perpetrators are held accountable. As you know, it's a very difficult to do. This office, we've been collaborating very closely with the UN to try to find what is kind of a mechanism that we can do to record the incidents of violence that many of these peoples have experienced, doing it in a way that protects them. And sometimes it may take years to have for that information to be prosecuted, but we're working very closely together to make sure that this is done.
I appreciate that. And Minister, if there can be any follow-up, I would like some case examples from that department, because the budget was tripled, but I see it doing virtually nothing compared to the work Dr. Bennett did. Let me turn to the developing world in the last 2 weeks has been launching the garbage flotilla headed back to Canada. It appears in recent years that the developing world, we've seen Malaysia, the Philippines, very upset about containers of garbage and recycling being sent to their countries from Canada. Since they're development partners in some projects, what are we doing to alleviate those projects? It's never good when Canada has garbage flotillas headed to our shores from the developing world.
Well, firstly, it was unfortunate that a decision was made to send that waste abroad and with no accountability. In the case of the Philippines, you heard Minister McKenna, who has asked for that garbage to be returned and to be disposed of safely here at home. And on Malaysia, I believe that there's some conversations happening now. We are invested heavily in ensuring that we protect the environments and address
30
climate
seconds.
change all around the world. $2.65 billion has been invested to that effect to ensure that that happens. In the case of Philippines, for example, we're working with indigenous women in the Philippines around clean water. And these efforts are really important because, as you know, climate change knows no borders.
These high-profile things with the garbage, are they blanking out the good work or making people disregard the good work we're doing on development?
No, we're taking
that's time.
accountability for others' mistakes and working to address them.
Thank you. Seeing the time, this will be the last question. We're going to go to MP Sidhu, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, thank you for being here this morning. You mentioned a couple of times the world needs more Canada. You touched on the issue of fundamental right to the women and the girls, created 70 new facilities where they can go and help. But the next thing is about the kids. No matter where they're born, they deserve the equal right to education. So I was wondering if you can update the committee, what have you been doing around the world so the kids can have a level playing field when it comes on to education.
Thank you for your question. For most, whether we've spoken with our Syrian neighbors when they were coming in, or those in refugee camps, or those who are displaced, not in a refugee camp abroad, when you ask them what they need, more often than not, they're worried, and rightfully so, anxious about their kids' education. And that's certainly the case with our partners around the world. I'm going to give you an example of how Canada's investments and leadership in providing education to kids, boys and girls, is making a difference and rallying support. And I think you guys have some numbers. When we had the G7 meeting, we were sitting around the table with world leaders, and we had, for the first time ever, feminists, renowned feminists from around the world, including Canada, providing advice to world leaders. And one of the asks they made was for education. Canada invested about $400 million, and the Prime Minister shared that. And what we saw happening was the team members and the staff to the presidents and the prime ministers around the room started exchanging notes and sharing numbers and back and forth. And by the time they were done that meeting, that $400 million had leveraged close to $4 billion in education for women and girls in conflict zones, the single largest investment of its kind ever. And that is important because the goal for most displaced people and refugees is that they can go home. There is no place like home. Everybody wants to go home, with the exception of a few. How are they to go back and rebuild what's been broken if they do not have the tools to do so? And education is one of those really important tools that ensures that what's been broken is pieced back together by the people who know the place best and are most invested in it.
Good to know. Thank you. Next, you touched about sustainability and stability around the world. I was wondering what are we doing as a country to promote our shared interest and values to make sure going forward our children and their children have a safest and fairer place to live around the world? Can you touch on that issue?
All of us, I think one of the best parts of the job for MPs is being able to talk to young people, visit them in schools and so on. And there are a lot of schools working on the Sustainable Development Goals. And young people are particularly keen and aware that what happens at home is connected to what happens around the world. And they're driving the conversation. They're driving the change. I think it was in a room like this just a few days ago where a bunch of kids, not from my riding, somebody else's, had come here, and they were asking us to do more and to work better together to accelerate progress, to address what's happening around the world by achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So I'd say young people care. Young people are aware. They're actively doing their part. With the Sustainable Development Goal around climate change, for example, they are pouring into streets here at home and around the world and asking decision makers to take seriously their future and not leave them with the instability and the disasters that could happen if we don't take action. So I'd say young people care, and they're actually inspiring the rest of us to step up and to do more.
Good job. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chair.
Well, I want to thank Minister Monsef for being here and answering questions from around the table today. I want to thank all colleagues for their questions. With that, why don't we suspend for a couple of minutes, then we will reconvene with departmental officials and go from there. So with that, we shall... Oh, yes, please.
Minister, we'd appreciate that report back if a report was given to OECD.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Thank you. So
following
noted.
up.
You got noted that? Okay. Thank you. And with that, we shall suspend. Reconvening. So this morning the committee is continuing our examination, and of course we have departmental officials here from Global Affairs Canada for the final hour of our consideration on the estimates. We've got a wide array of officials that I'd like to welcome to committee, but there's a large number of you. I'm wondering if you can maybe, starting at this end of the table, introduce yourself and your role, and then we can of course open it up to questions.
Sure. Bonjour tout le monde. Sarah Taylor. I'm the Director General for North Asia and Oceania.
Arun Thangaraj, the Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer for Global Affairs.
Mark Wozdecki, Assistant Deputy Minister, International Security and Political Affairs.
Heather Jeffrey, Assistant Deputy Minister for Consular Security and Emergency Management.
Troy Nalashnik, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Europe, Middle East, North Africa.
I'm Cheryl Urban. I'm the Director General responsible for South America and Inter-American Affairs.
Thank you very much, and I welcome you all, and thank you for attending the committee this morning. Let's go straight into questions, and we're going to begin with MP Abeltaif, please.
Well, good morning, and thanks again for being here in front of the committee. Feminist International Assistance Policy, which is basically a natural extension of our former conservative government's Muskoka initiative, the funding for which is still in place until 2020. So, meeting with civil society organizations, they've expressed concern about this funding being extended beyond 2020. Would you be able to brief us if there's any plans to extend that initiative past 2020?
So the funding for the previous maternal, newborn, and child health initiative remains within Global Affairs budget, and they form part of these main estimates. As with any priority area, and you see in the Feminist International Assistance Policy commitments to spending on health, including sexual health and reproductive rights, the forward spending plans for those initiatives are currently in early stages of formation. So the intention is, as the minister said in the previous, is to provide stable and ongoing funding for health and sexual health and reproductive rights.
So is that a commitment to continue funding beyond 2020 at the same level, or less or more?
So in the main estimates, you have an amount for health that's remained stable, and currently what we are doing now is we're looking at the various priority areas as articulated in the Feminist International Assistance Policy, as well as the needs that are in the countries that we program, and determine what the spending level for those interventions should be.
I'm asking, I know stability means something, certainty is the better term. And we heard from, or I've heard personally from association and CSOs that the FIAP is chronically underfunded, and there have been questions about how have you gotten to the result that you have a claim, given that you haven't provided public data. So again, we need solid information or solid data to at least communicate and understand how far this is going, and why, as we say, a lot of noise, not so much wheat. Like we've seen a lot of noise, but there's no results that is showing. And if the CSOs are complaining and they're saying the FIAP is underfunded, we need to understand from the department where are you going with this, and changing to gender levels. At the discretion of from level 0 to level 1, which, in my opinion, is like sometimes you're changing the financial statement in a way to change the bottom line. So I would like to hear from you if that is the case, if this is where you're going with this, and again, clarity is very, very important, so we can or we're able to communicate those results to CSOs and civil societies.
So maybe I'll address, so the Feminist International Assistance Policy articulated a number of commitments and spending targets that we do report on. We report on it through our departmental results report, as well as through the international, Official Development Assistance Accountability Act. So the reporting on how we spend our money and the commitments and the targets that are there is published on a regular basis. With respect to gender coding, one of the things that we do, and this falls under my area, is that there is an assurance function that whatever code, whether it be gender or a gender marker or a code against a sector, is validated before reporting. In the previous hour, we talked about reporting to the OECD. And we have a strong oversight function to ensure that codes are not just changed or applied randomly, that there's rigor. We have, for example, on the gender side, we have gender specialists who will provide assurance that an investment or an accounting of an initiative towards a gender marker is accurate and warranted.
So that is what not is being translated into how the civil societies and even ourselves as opposition parties, when we look at it on paper, it doesn't seem to be explained properly, or at least to be understandable properly. And we seem to hear or to get all these answers only at committee, and we're trying to get that from you today. So why is not the department is not embracing the Prime Minister's supposed to be called transparent by default ethos and publicly providing the information that was, as parliamentarians and civil society, required to hold you to account?
30 seconds.
So we need to bridge that gap somehow, and we need to explain. I mean, transparency is just a motto, but really there's nothing is being translated on the ground, and that's what we've been hearing from civil societies, and that's what we've been feeling as parliamentarians do.
Very quickly, we provide very, very detailed accounting of our spending every year through the OECD, who provide the standard of how all of our development dollars get spent. We report through the ODAAA report, as well as make data sets available publicly through the International Aid Transparency Initiative, as well as on Government of Canada websites.
Thank you, Mr. Nagaraj. We will now move to MP Vandenbeld, please.
Yes, thank you very much. As was mentioned earlier by my colleague, this committee is just in the final stages of putting together a study on Canada's international democracy promotion. And one of the things that we heard from the witnesses is that when we're looking at democratic development, democracy promotion, election observation, we're not necessarily looking at the least developed countries. And yet, when we formulate our aid policy, it's primarily focused on those poorest of poor countries. So, but on the other hand, it isn't really diplomacy either. If you look at the global affairs side, in some cases, actually, democracy promotion and the work that we would be doing might actually be at odds with some of the diplomatic efforts. So where does that actually fit? I mean, we talk about democracy, development, and diplomacy. Democracy used to sit under CEDA, governance and democracy. In global affairs, where would you see the best fit for Canada's efforts on democracy promotion? And if you could perhaps elaborate a little bit on what we are doing in this regard.
Thank you very much. I think the simple and short answer to your question is that everybody owns the democracy file at Global Affairs. It's not something that we want to create a silo and give entire responsibility, because my colleagues who deal with the geographic components of the department, they all have programs supporting democracy in one way or another in the key fragile states that they are investing in. The Middle East is a good example where we are, through the support that the government announced for the Middle East strategy, are helping to build or rebuild a stable, unified, pluralistic, functioning democracy in Iraq, which is really beset by challenges of many different ethnic and religious groups. And so we have a number of programs, some of which are led by my colleagues in the geographic. Some are led by my branch, but we all are expected to work together to manage the democracy file because it's too diverse and too vast a portfolio to confine it to a single entity in the department.
So when you look at the technical assistance that Canada does, whether it's on election monitoring, whether it's on parliamentary development, rule of law, justice systems, so when we look at the actual institutions of governance, there was at one time a section on governance that was really a clearinghouse for the best practices, for ideas, for the coordinating the cross-cutting that you were talking about around the different departments. Is that kind of challenge function or gathering of best practices? I know globally, of course, we have a number of areas, UNDP and others, that gather these kinds of best practices and have that in-house expertise. Is there a place, and just for example, the last time that we did the estimates in this committee, I spoke of electoral observation, and it's one thing to send people abroad and do one election, for instance, in Ukraine, which I know we've done a very good job of, but to be able to have that in-house expertise, do you have a place where that kind of expertise is being gathered as opposed to in the different geographic regions? And if not, is that something that you think would be helpful?
Yeah, thank you. I now understand where you were going with your question. Indeed, we received some new funding in the budget to deal with democracy promotion and in particular electoral observation. And so for all issues, we always have a focal point in our department so that there is one place that civil society can call and then that focal point can ensure that all the arms of the department that can play into it are going to be integrated. That focal point lies in my branch and is responsible for administering the issues. And you mentioned Ukraine, where recently we invested up to $24 million in supporting not only the electoral observation mission that we sent there, but any number of other ways that we helped the Ukrainians produce a fairly credible election. Helping them with disinformation was another area in which we supported them. But yes, indeed, we do have a focal point in the department for democracy and electoral observation.
And under the Feminist International Assistance Policy, of course, democracy promotion is one of the focus areas. So how does that intersect with the Feminist International Assistance Policy?
Well, it's a core component of the Feminist International Assistance Policy, and so it stands alone with all of the other elements, and all of those elements are meant to be integrated when we go abroad. And it's an area
30 seconds.
I've mentioned has received new funding. We've clarified the lines of authority and reporting in the department to ensure that we can deliver on that.
Thank you very much. MP Duncan, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for you appearing. And I prefer to say Your Excellency. Very grateful for how kind you were when we had our delegation to Ukraine quite some time ago. And I didn't realize you're in the department, and that's great to see. I'm not going to ask a question about it, but I do want to hope that there will be follow-up. We are doing this study, as my colleague, Ms. Vandenveld, has said. And I'm deeply troubled that several budgets back, only 4% of the budget was on democratic development. I think you can anticipate we'll be asking for more. It is one of the action items in the policy, and it obviously is not delivering properly if it stays at that small percentage. I would like to ask, first of all, 2 questions related to emergencies and humanitarian assistance. A number of issues have been raised with me by civil society organizations since I gained this portfolio. One is, consistent with Feminist International Assistance Policy, the question is, have you established or do you intend to establish a dedicated pool of aid for gender in emergencies? In other words, a dedicated pool, not just, gee, we're giving money. Secondly, Canada has committed 25% of its aid is supposed to go to local actors, local actors, in other words, organizations in the receiving countries for humanitarian assistance. Have you tracked the money going to local groups? And if so, can you release that?
So just quickly, yes, we do track. So as part of our previous question on data, we do track the type of organizations that we do work with, in regardless of partner, whether it be multilateral or local, and we are having an increase in the number of local partners that we use. Even through our normal traditional humanitarian assistance, we often use, so even large international NGOs, for example, like an Oxfam, will use a local implementing partner to deliver their assistance.
First question was, have you established or will you establish a dedicated pool of aid for gender in emergencies, as opposed to the one-off like the Rohingya?
So as part of one of the key pillars in the policy was to apply a gender lens and a gender responsive approach to humanitarian assistance. And so as the minister provided the example of what we were doing in Cox's Bazar is one element of it, but all through the policy, for example, that in humanitarian actions we will look at how women specifically are impacted, nutritional support for malnourished children, access to health services, including sexual health and reproductive services as well.
Yes, but is there a dedicated pool of resources for that?
Humanitarian resources, so all of our humanitarian action is responsive. So when we allocate funding to a humanitarian initiative, that is a lens that we apply. So we don't say for all of the humanitarian resources we'll allocate a specific amount.
See why the question, okay? And this question is a broader question that many are asking. Many who've provided emergency assistance, many provided engineering assistance and water and sanitation, is you've now got this Feminist International Assistance Policy that supposedly overrides everything. And so the question is there a set-aside dedicated fund for that? Or is all aid now only going to be about assisting women? So I think that people are seeking greater clarity. The answer that you're giving is exactly why people are puzzled about how does that match up with the new policy. So I won't push it any further, but I think there still isn't certainty. There was an earlier question that I put to the minister, and it's related to that. Questions have been raised about when will we actually see the more detailed guidelines and how we're actually delivering the action items under the new policy, and that's one of the areas. My other question is about international assistance for climate change, sustainable development. The responsibilities in the cabinet appear to have gone from the statute imposes the duty on the Minister of Environment, some now responsibility for President of the Treasury Board. But it jumps from minister to minister. Sometimes it is Minister Monsef, and then it's Minister Duclos who went to the UN meeting. So far as the Feminist International Assistance Policy is the override, and part of that deals with climate change and environment, who has the budget and who's taking the lead on delivering our commitments on sustainable development?
So for the minister, the Minister of International Development has responsibility for climate change projects as part of the $2.65 billion commitment that take place in developing countries. And those are the projects that we deliver either bilaterally, country to country, or through our multilateral channels with development banks. So we work very closely with Environment and Climate Change Canada on the overall approach. We often have to go to my colleagues at the Treasury Board Secretariat for approval of those initiatives. But it is a very coordinated approach. But the Minister of International Development has specific responsibilities for the investments that fall under or that pertain to developing countries.
So the Minister of Environment and Climate Change signs the international... Oh, am I finished?
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, if I have more time, I'd like to follow up, but it remains confusing.
Thank you, MP Duncan. We shall now move to MP Bayliss, please.
Chair. I'd like to ask a question about foreign aid and understand how do we do a breakdown by geography of our foreign aid? Where are the pockets in that?
So as part of our, we report on that through the official, the OECD report, where we break down all of our official development assistance spending by the government, by country. By country.
Okay, and what are the top, say, 3 countries where our foreign aid is?
Let me see if I have this. I believe that Afghanistan is the largest recipient. Let me see if I have it. I'll probably have to come back to you. Afghanistan is the largest recipient. Ethiopia and Haiti would be the second and third.
England. Yeah. Ethiopia and Haiti?
Haiti.
So, how, like, I'd like to understand, do we have a measure, do we have some types of measures to decide the impact of that investment? What are the measures that we say, okay, so we're giving X amount of dollars to, say, Afghanistan and Y amount to Haiti? How do you measure the impact of that money?
So the decision to even work with a country, right? We look at, there's an approach that analyzes the individual country context to determine what sectors that we should be doing and what level of expenditure should be there by country. We also look at what our colleagues in other donor countries are doing and what the local government also is doing in those various sectors. For each investment that we do in a specific area, so if you take health, for example, every initiative has a results framework that sits around that, that's embedded in there that we report on, and that rolls up into our overall departmental results framework, which are also aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. So all of that foreign assistance spending or international development assistance spending is aligned at the very project level to higher level results.
So those countries that are big spends, was that a decision taken at the political level or just something that percolated up through the demands that came to your department and your department decided this is the priority areas? Is it a top-down or bottom-up? How is it that Afghanistan is 1, Ethiopia's 2, and Haiti's 3?
So for every country, there's, as I said, there's analysis based on what the country needs are, looking at our entire development assistance budget and what we can allocate across the portfolio of countries that we're involved in, and where our official development assistance makes the most difference. So it's really that type of assessment that,
It's a bottom-up
drives
approach. It's not a political decision that says we want X amount of the money being spent in Afghanistan or Y amount.
The allocation of resources is really based on that analysis of what of an individual country analysis based in a country strategy.
That it comes from the bottom up. I'm trying to get my finger on the idea of how we are measuring that impact, and I can see what you're saying within the silos. So, for example, Afghanistan's asked for this, Ethiopia's asked for that, and Haiti's asked for a third thing. So one is asked for health, education, I don't know, development of a different type. Are you measuring it against OECD criteria? You said if for that $100 spent in place A or B, how do we actually measure the true impact across countries and across needs, if you will? So one's a need for education, one's a need for health.
Right.
$100 in education in Ethiopia, another $100 for health in Afghanistan. How do we measure which is having a bigger impact to make a decision on where to give it in? Like, I'm trying to get to the core of how you decide this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do.
In terms of an individual investment or an overall country?
We've got X amount of dollars.
So if we have X amount of dollars, we will look, again, a specific investment has to be consistent with the country strategy. So if we're looking in Ethiopia, for example, we'll look at what are the needs are and what do other donors do, and then we look at what investment will make the greatest impact. So if it's in health and in a specific sector of health, we look at, well, what are the results that we will achieve from this, and we work with our civil society partners or our multilateral partners to determine what the impacts of those investments are.
To simplify it, you know, if you're going to give money here in Canada, they have these measures to say, is this a charity that's taking 90% of its money's going through the system, or is only 50% making its way to the beneficiary? There's certain criteria that I would use when I'm asked to give money to one charity or another to see if is my money actually being put to work or is it being wasted. So that's what I'm trying to drive
So
at, that measure.
So that
30 seconds.
So that efficiency measure of, the input and output, that is done as part of the financial analysis of a specific investment to see what is the overhead, what are the direct costs, what is the end result.
Number?
An overall result number or an overall financial number?
Comparable number. So it got 50% effectiveness here, 77% there.
There's no, so I'd have to go back to say that all of those project results will roll up
That's
into
time.
an overall result by area, and so that, yes, you can compare them provided that they're similar enough projects, because an education project, for example, in Ethiopia will be completely different than an education project in Senegal. And so the results may be different. They may roll up into a larger indicator, but they're not directly comparable given the country context.
Thank you.
Thank you. MP Seni, please.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I have one very broad question, two very specific questions. One question that's interesting to me is that, we live in a global world and things happen very quickly, whether it's a humanitarian crisis or whether it's a natural disaster. How do you decide where you're going to respond, because it's infinite, and what the appropriate level of that response will be?
Yeah, I can tackle that one. I would say all of our humanitarian assistance is delivered first and foremost based on need. It's about the very real needs we see in different situations across the world. The need is always greater than any one country could possibly respond to, but we prioritize based on a series of metrics about access to food, water, shelter, sexual and gender-based violence, a whole range of concerns that arise in emergencies, whether they are short-term emergencies caused by natural disasters, or whether, as is most common right now, long-running emergencies and slow onset emergencies that develop over time and are caused by conflicts that can last decades. So we prioritize. We no longer prioritize based on necessarily the urgency of the moment, because we find that we're giving year after year, because situations in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, we know that the needs are long-term and we have to invest for a sustainable and long-term approach. So we now are able to offer multi-year assistance in these countries, which really has made a difference to the efficiency and the effectiveness, because we can plan over the longer term, we can hire qualified staff over the longer term, and the investments allow us to invest in the people of those regions so that they can take control of their own development and advancement.
So let me just be specific in two areas. Over the last few days, we've been speaking about the plight of the Rohingya people, especially Cox's Bazar, and sometimes aid can be delivered, but it's very difficult to be deployed. And Bangladesh, you can deliver the aid. How do you how is it logistically, are you able to deploy the aid? And can you give us some examples of the type of aid that you've deployed?
Yeah, so it requires a creative and flexible approach. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. In conflict areas, often our access is restricted or limited, and so we have to work through trusted multilateral partners, the Red Cross, the World Food Program, who have access, work with local staff, and are able to reach the most vulnerable as quickly as possible. In other areas, we have to look at innovation, the use of mobile payment systems, the use of cards, so that we don't undermine local economies by funding food deliveries, but rather enable local clients to purchase their own food from local markets and sustain farmers from their own local economy. So there is a wide variety of tools. We work through Canadian NGO partners who have long-standing relationships with local partners. Local delivery is the most effective. It's not always possible given the security context, but that's the goal that we would strive for. And so it's quite a wide range of very diverse tools.
So the other place that right now, as you can appreciate, the tragedy is and the humanitarian crisis is in Venezuela. And if we look there, it's a different situation because aid is not being allowed to get into the country itself. So aid is being delivered to the front lines in Colombia. How do you adjust to that factor? Because you'll have one situation where the country may be poor and may not have the capacity to actually receive the aid and deploy the aid because of circumstances or infrastructure that's on the ground there. But you have a different circumstance where the country's not allowing the aid to come in. So you're sitting on another side of the border. How are you able to get that aid in, and whatever you can say? I mean, some of it you may not want to say publicly, but just to give us an idea of how you're doing it.
I'll defer to my colleague Cheryl Urban to respond to that.
Yes, very much so. So let me just say that Canada is very seized with the humanitarian situation in Venezuela and also the migration crisis, which is the largest outside of Syria right now. And Canada is using a number of different tools at its disposal in order to help Venezuelans. Some of it is humanitarian assistance, some of it is development assistance, actually, and both of them are working together in regions. It is a mixture. The majority of our assistance is provided for Venezuelans outside of Venezuela. Canada hosted the Lima Group meeting on February 4th in Ottawa, and Prime Minister Trudeau announced $53 million for Venezuelans at that time. A large share of that was going for Colombia specifically. That was actually a Canadian contribution of about $17 million towards a World Bank loan, a policy loan for Colombia in order to absorb the migrants, because this is the influx of migrants, which in Colombia alone is over 1.5 million people, is putting
Displacement within Colombia itself.
right. So and Colombia has been extremely generous, and it's been very progressive in its immigration policies with regards to the Venezuelan migrants. And so part of what Canada is doing is helping countries like Colombia, who are absorbing large populations, in order to ensure that their services for all people, including Venezuelan migrants, are
30
are
seconds.
be able to meet the demands. I would just add there is a small portion that does go into Venezuela, but it's restricted because the Maduro regime does not allow access. There are some local organizations, they have an absorptive capacity, but they are delivering where they can aid to Venezuelans inside the country.
Thank you.
Thank you. MP Ellison, please.
Thank you very much. Has a report on exports of military goods from Canada report been tabled in Parliament since 2017?
I'll have to give you the answer later to that.
Thank you. And then the follow-up question to that is usually an annual report on export and import permits gets tabled in the House as well. And I'm wondering if there has been one since 2016.
The government has made a commitment to adhere to the Arms Trade Treaty, and under that commitment, which should be made official in a matter of months, there will be an annual report.
Has been one in the past, so I'm just wondering what is the most recent annual report of export and import permits that's been tabled in the House?
I'd be happy to provide that answer.
Thank you very much. So then could you give me an idea of the value, the annual value of our export of military goods?
Well, I'll also have to provide that answer to you later.
Perfect. That would be fantastic. So with that, could you tell me the number approximately of permits that are applied for every year?
We'll certainly provide that to you later on.
And then if you could also give me an idea of the number that are approved, and if you could tell me the average time frame for approval. And the reason that I ask that is because obviously our defense industry is critical to our sovereignty and our security. And being a small country of 37 million, our defense industry has about 80% of its revenue driven, obviously, from exports, not from sales specifically to the Canadian government and in support of the Canadian forces. So export permits, obviously, are fundamentally important to that revenue. And the numbers from 2016 were that it's over $1 billion annually. What I understand is that there has been a significant increase in approval times for export permits even to those countries that are on the automatic firearms country control list and are even NATO allies. So our defense industry is suffering at the moment because of this increase in the time frame that it takes to have these export permits approved. I'm wondering if you could give me an idea of why there is an increase and if there has been any kind of policy or delegation of authority approval change in the process in the last 3 or 4 years.
I'm not aware of any change in the approval process or any delegated authority different from previous years, but I'd be very happy to provide additional detail later.
That would be really fantastic if you could, because my understanding is that the practice within the ministry was that many of those routine export permits could be approved at the public servant level for the countries that are on the AFCCL list. And yet now it appears that even for NATO countries and even for countries on that AFCCL list, that it actually needs to go personally to have the minister sign off on it, and that could perhaps be a result then in terms of the delay. Can you comment on that?
I don't believe there's been any change in that practice. The vast majority of all decisions are taken at the officials level when they adhere to our policy. A very, very small number go to ministers. But I will validate that statement for you because I do not believe that there's been any change in that practice.
All right, so then that's critically important, and if you could provide that information, because obviously then we would like to understand what then is the result of this additional time frame delay, even that fact that it's jeopardizing obviously certain contracts and these companies' abilities to deliver on these contracts that they've entered into, and what perhaps we can advise companies to do to mitigate that risk, but also what we as elected officials can advocate for to support the department in terms of being able to process these permits more quickly. Could you give us any idea of what perhaps could be some of the challenges and what some of the things we might be able to help you with?
As I say, I believe the practice remains the same as it has been in many years. The only difference that we are now engaged with is our adherence to the Arms Trade Treaty, which will embed the criteria of this international treaty in our decision-making processes. But the fact that we are and will adhere to the Arms Trade Treaty doesn't mean we will suddenly start not issuing export permits. I think we will provide you data on exactly what the state of play is on that. But as I say, there has been no change to my knowledge in the practice of how decisions are made.
And I would appreciate if we could have that data over a 5-6 year period so that we can see the change in that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Alislav. I thank colleagues for providing me with some time in the last question to focus on an area that's of particular interest of mine, and I know all members of this committee, and that's Canada's Arctic sovereignty. Challenges are emerging in the Arctic and in the North, in part as a result of climate change and shifting geopolitics. Our committee had the opportunity to travel and visit 4 communities in the Arctic this past October of this last year. The main estimates include a vote of $6.13 million related to enhancing Canada's global Arctic leadership. Measures under the new funding initiative include enhancing Indigenous and Northern people participation in international Arctic initiatives. Our recent report, Canada's Arctic Sovereignty, focused on recommendations that the Government of Canada should provide stable and long-term funding to the Canadian permanent participants to the Arctic Council. What other Arctic funding is included in the estimates? And how do these initiatives respond to the issues raised in the committee's recent report on the Arctic, which expressed a dual vision of nation building at home, as well as remaining vigilant in terms of, again, the geopolitical issues that are emerging up there?
Thanks very much. I'll take the question, and my colleagues can jump in as required. As you very rightly point out, the Arctic is an area of critical importance to us, and it is an extraordinarily vulnerable area as well. And I think it's a very positive development that the budget did provide additional funding to fulfill a number of those areas where we needed to work. Sustainable development was one of them. You mentioned the ensuring the permanent participation of the indigenous organizations, so that we have a very, very inclusive process as we go forward in developing our approach and our strategy. Part of the money will go for a permanent secretariat for the Sustainable Development Working Group. We have money that is also included to engage and support youth in the region. So that's a big step, and it will help us. There's also money to engage U-Arctic, which is sort of a consortium of universities and institutes that will really help us build the sort of structure and the sort of intellectual foundations as we go forward. I'd also just mention that we're renewing the Arctic Policy Framework, and this is all with a view to being an inclusive process where we engage Northerners first, we engage Indigenous groups, all levels of government, in order to militate towards a really sound basis for our strategy. And as you said, climate change, I think, is presenting a very real threat to us in that region that is disproportionately affected by what is happening. And so all of these efforts are meant to buttress and support how we can move securely into the future.
Mr. Gwozdecky, do you have anything to add on sort of the broader vision of it? Good. Okay. Colleagues, MP Sidhu, you're up next. There's about 2.5 minutes left if you would like to finish.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll share my time if there's any left. A general question on the budget. I got these questions on the operating expenditure. I mean, the budget is around 6-figure, and the expenditure is around 2 billion figure. How do you come up with that? Is it based on the previous year expenditures? Because the reason I'm asking the question, because the World Vision and Red Cross, they spend about 80% of their budget into their management fees, and people have that concern. So I'm concerned about $2 billion. I'm not challenging it, but I just need to know the procedure.
So our operating budget is based on a number of factors. So one, we're unique in federal departments because we're in 110, 111 countries. We have 174 missions. So you have in that operating budget a very significant percentage of operating costs that are very much fixed and determined by leases, by utility bills, and all those things. So those are essentially just the fixed operating costs of the organization. In terms of how we arrive at the remaining budget, it really is based on a program analysis. So we look at program by program what the cost is to deliver that, whether it be a development program or a diplomacy program. We look at the level of IT support that's required, if there's specific IT applications that are there, and then we also look at the human resources that are
30 seconds
that are required for that.
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. There's that famous expression, give a man a fish, he can eat for a day, teach a man to fish, he can eat for a lifetime. I'm wondering if any one of you could comment on the capability building that's done in different countries when Canada invests. Thank you.
to be a very brief answer because we're right at the end of time. So I know it's a big question.
Well, we certainly adhere to that concept of training and capacity building, and so this is why we are a government that no longer engages in any significant amount of infrastructure building, for example, because that would be not focused on building up the capabilities. We have any number of programs across the department that address capacity and training needs, and I would say I think the vast majority of the things that we do are aimed in that direction.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank our officials for being here this morning, providing answer. There's a couple of items for follow-up that were requested, so if we can ask you to please submit those to the clerk. And with that, we now have to call the votes required to complete the committee's consideration of the mains. Under Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, shall vote 1, less the amount granted in the interim estimates carry?
Division.
On division? On division. On division. Thank you. Shall vote 5, less the amount granted in the interim estimates carry?
On division.
On division? On division. Shall vote 10, less the amount granted in the interim estimates carry?
On division.
Division.
On division. Shall vote 15, less the amount granted in the interim estimates carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 30 carry?
Division.
Division.
On division. Shall vote 35 carry?
Division.
On division. Shall vote 40 carry?
On division.
Shall vote 45 carry?
Division.
On division. Shall vote 50 carry?
Division.
On division. Under International Development Research Centre, shall vote 1, less the amount granted in the interim estimates carry?
On division.
On division. Under International Joint Commission, Canadian Section, shall vote 1, less the amount granted in the interim estimates carry?
Division.
On division. Shall I report the votes on the main estimates to the House?
Yes.
Yes?
That you can.
Thank you for your cooperation, everyone. I'm going to ask us to just go in camera. There's one item we have to clear up. So if we can clear the room. Again, thank you to our officials that were here this morning. We'll suspend for a minute while we clear the room.
Thank you.